Hey everybody, it's hwsteele, and in this video I want to talk to you about how history repeats itself. Sort of. Now here's what I mean. Well, we're going to go to W.D. Gann's book, The Tunnel Through the Air, page 197, and read a bit about Robert Gordon's great campaign in major motors, okay? Then we're going to look at the price chart for a bit. On Sunday, June 19th, 1927, Robert Gordon spent the day studying his charts and working out his cycles for the stocks, cotton, and grain. Or it says for stocks, cotton, and grain. He was short of major motors. In other words, the market was going down, and was watching it very closely. On this day, he made a new and great discovery of a time factor from which he figured that major motors would decline until about June 30th, and then start an advance that would last until about September 16th, 1927, when the company would be 19 years old. And at that time, the stock would reach final high and would then go down to February to April 1929. He figured that the stock should advance to around 270 points by September 16th, and made up his mind to watch it closely and cover his shorts if it went down around June 30th, and then start buying the stock. On June 30th, it declined, and he bought it. He bought in his short contracts and bought for long account 500 shares of major motors at 192.5. He decided to pyramid all the way up. On July 15th, he bought 500 shares at 204. On July 21st, he bought 300 shares at 214. And on July 26th, he bought 300 shares at 224. On August 5th, the stock advanced to 230, and he raised his stop on the 1,600 shares to 225. On August 8th, his stock was sold out at 225. In other words, there was a reaction in the market there. But he saved his profits. He still believed that the stock would go up to around 270 by September 16th, but he expected a reaction of 12 to 15 points. So he decided to wait for a few days and watch the charts to see how the stock acted. On August 12th, major motors declined to 218, being down a little over 12 points as he figured, and he bought 1,000 shares at 218. He placed the stop at 212, a point which he figured it would not decline to. The advance started, and on August 20th, he bought 300 shares at 228. On August 24th, he bought 300 shares more at 238. And on August 26th, he bought 300 shares more at 248. When he started pyramiding, his plan was to buy or sell the largest amount first and then gradually decrease buying and selling smaller amounts on the way up or down, and always using a stop loss order to protect himself, quite obviously. On September 7th, the stock advanced to 253, and he raised his stop on the entire amount to 243. This stop was never reached, but on September 14th, a rapid advance was on, and he bought 300 shares more at 258, giving him a line of 2,200 shares of the stock. He figured that it should advance on September 16th to around 270. When the market advanced to 272, at this time, he sold out his 2,200 shares at 272. He cleaned up a profit on this deal of over $80,000, and as he figured that the stock would make final top around this time, he decided to put out a line of short stock and pyramid all the way down, remaining short for the long pull, as he talked about over here. And then it shows how the stock splits, so his numbers change right here. They're divided by 2. So if we look up here, we see that his plan was to buy from the end of June until mid-September, when the company would be 19 years old. And then at that point in time, that he expected the market to go down for months and months and months and months. Okay, so he bought, his first level was 192.5. And if we look at the chart here, we see that 192.5 is right about there. So he bought at 192.5. And then he decided to pyramid all the way up. On July 15th, he bought 500 at 204, then at 214, and then at 224. So if we look, we see 204 right there. or right at this high, previous high level. 214, 10 points higher, right above here. A breakout, right? Then 224, which is right at this level right in here, breaking out above here, right? Now comes the part where we expected the reaction, or he expected the reaction. On August 5th, the stock advanced to 230, and he raised his stop on the 1,600 shares to 225. So we look at this, 230, of course, is right up at this level. Put that right there. And then I can go ahead and delete these since we have used them already. And I'll use this one for his stop, which was 225 right there. So that was his stop. Excuse me. On August 8th, his stock was sold out at 225. And he still believed it was going to go longer because it was just the approximate midpoint reaction right there. So he expected a reaction. On August 12th, it declined to 218. And he put his stop at 212. So he bought at 218 and put his stop at 212. So 218 is right about here, which isn't perfectly represented on that, but close. And then his stock, there's 218, and his stop was at 212, which was quite obviously never hit. Now, let's see. 212, and 228, 238, and 248, moving by tens again. So we have 228, 238 up here, and then 248 right here. I'll just move this one. 248 was right there. Getting another reaction around this area. Let's see, 248. When he started pyramiding, his plan was to buy or sell large amounts, blah, 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 blah. See, on September 7th, the stock advanced 253. He raised his stop on the entire amount to 243. So we got 253. I'll move this one right up here. And the stop was 243, which was right here. And it was never hit. But here, this stop was never hit. We couldn't delete that horizontal line there. Then, of course, the very end of it all, he figured that it would should advance on September 16th to around 270. When it was at 272, he sold the 2,200 shares at 272 and then went short. So 272, we'll use this line. 270 was right up here, and then 272 right here, and then the market obviously moved down and down and down. Now, why is this so interesting? The answer is because this price chart right here is not Major Motors. This is actually Tesla, which obviously is a much, much, much more modern stock. And this advance that followed his Major Motors campaign perfectly happened in 2015. So history was repeating itself here. Now here's the interesting point. Major Motors was 19 years old at the end of that move. And if we divide that by 4, we get 4.75 years. Tesla was 4.75 years old at the end of that move. So it was 1/4 of, as far as the time goes, it was exactly 1/4 of the Major Motors timing. But in Tesla's life, Tesla's first trade date was June 29th, 2010. So that would be 2011, 2012, 2013. The fourth year would be 2014. And then 9 months later would be at the March point right here. So in reality, the 3/4, or the 1/4, I should say, was the beginning point of this move, not the end point like I just indicated. That was an error. But we had a move that exactly mirrored what happened in the Major Motors move, and it was directly in relation to the time frame that was given in 1927 when Gann wrote this. And this was happening, 2015? It was almost 90 years later. It was actually 88 years later, which is pretty interesting in and of itself. So I thought I'd point that out to you guys. I thought years and years ago when this was happening and I discovered it and watched it, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. So that's just something for you to think about. Both stocks are stocks on a transportation company, specifically the automobile. Both of them moved in the same time frame, same amount of time, the same point distances, almost exactly as described in the Major Motors campaign in Tesla. The movement was. The market came down to it, and then the market went down for a long time afterwards, just like it. And the 19 years that was mentioned here is in direct relation to the amount of time that Tesla was around when this movement actually happened. So anyway, that's all. I just wanted to point it out to you. I've been wanting to do that now for a few months, and just want you to think about the implications of that. For next week, when I start releasing or re-recording and re-releasing, I guess I should say, the trend duration forecasting videos that I had talked about doing in last week's, or the last video I did, I think it was. Anyway, this is hwsteele, and I will talk to you next week.